and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup, and here we are with our new haircuts. You know, I figured something out. Even though my mother's been dead for 25 years, I'm still getting haircuts in the frugal childhood way. You let it grow too long, and then you get it cut too short, and then you let it grow too long again.
Well, I do that not for my mother, who always would say, well, when are you going to get a haircut?
I'm always thrilled when I overcome one of those childhood mandates.
And the winner is Moonlight.
Yippee!
About an African-American gay man coming of age in a very tough environment. It was the best picture of the year, according to the Academy. And we're going to bring you our interview with the story writer and now Oscar winner,
Tarell Alvin McCraney.
There it is.
Well, I'll bring you a little bit of it, but we'll tell you how to find the whole thing online.
Yes.
And our dear leader, Mr. Trump, pulled his support for Title IX claims by transgender students. But a federal judge in Pennsylvania says they have equal protection claims, and some school districts are standing up for their trans students.
And others are not. And the Arkansas High Court has upheld a state law that invalidates local LGBT rights ordinances, at least in terms of Fayetteville for the moment.
Well, it's complex. We thought it was going to be good, but now they've quashed it. It's a sad story from Florida of a lesbian couple murdered by the almost ex-husband of one of them.
And two transgender women were murdered in separate attacks in New Orleans and another in Monroe, Louisiana.
All within a very short period of time. A couple of college football players have come out in Illinois and Arizona.
In Australia, an anti-gay extortion ring was exposed and broken up. And it turned out to be run by a 16-year-old, but not before one of the victims committed suicide.
ABC TV's When We Rise brings the history of the San Francisco LGBT movement to prime time. As we tape, we've seen only the first 2 hours, but of course we will pass judgment on that.
Okay.
But first, we're passing judgment on the Oscars and Moonlight, and we are over the moon because we both adored this movie and longed for it to win, but could not. You know, I was surer about Trump winning the presidency than I was about the chance of Moonlight winning the Oscars. So it was just thrilling to have it win.
Shocking, and you know, you know, Moonlight also won for Best Adapted Screenplay.
Yep.
And that's why we have Tarell Alvin McCraney on the show. He was the story writer, and Barry Jenkins, the director, wrote the screenplay.
They both won the Adapted Screenplay Award, and Mahershala Ali won the Best Supporting Actor Oscar.
Well, we'll put up the picture of Barry and
Tarell. Look
yes.
at them together.
At the Oscars.
I love that white suit of Tarell's, but I'm crazy about Tarell because he showed up here and we had a wonderful interview with him.
And you know, Moonlight is this coming-of-age story. We have pictures also of the three men who played at different stages of the life.
As a young boy, as a teenager, and as a man.
Yes.
And those are the three who all played him in this movie without having met before they played him.
And now they're doing Calvin Klein ads.
Well, they're all dressed by Calvin Klein for the Oscars. You know, it just broke my heart that they lost the opportunity for the explosion of joy that would have happened if it had been a clean announcement of their win.
I cried. I know it sounds silly, but I mean, it just was like, oh my God, here's this huge breakthrough. This is the first LGBT alone themed film, African-American themed, that's not about oppression like 12 Years a Slave. I mean, first. Huge indie movie.
And not a white person in the cast.
Right.
Just a brilliant, beautiful movie.
Should have won for cinematography.
Absolutely. I think it should have won for score. I thought its score was better than La La Land's. It's a haunting score that really just swept me away.
And some of the most beautiful pictures you're ever going to see about a very tough subject, which is based on the lives of its creators.
Both Barry and Tarell, who both grew up in that Liberty City, Miami neighborhood, blocks away from each other. This was their story. They both had crack-addicted mothers with HIV. It's just a stunning, stunning movie. I couldn't be more moved and happy.
And we talk about, we like to look for silver linings, and perhaps the silver lining is that the Oscars have gotten kind of tired. I haven't done an Oscar party in years. I'm kind of over them because it's anticlimactic. And a La La Land win would have been anticlimactic. It's what everybody expected. And the fact that this happened, put it on the front pages, and everybody knows about Moonlight now.
Yes.
And maybe we'll become curious about it and go see it.
Well, we have been slobbering all over it for months and months and months. We've been urging you to see it. I am shocked at the number of people I've heard say since this win that they haven't seen it yet. I am happy to see they are making an effort to see it now, some of them.
And see it in the movies if you can. I mean,
yes.
Rather than waiting for it.
It's on demand on cable. You can, or stream it or whatever, but it's really rewarding to see it in a movie theater because the cinematography is so amazing and because it will sweep you up and overwhelm you when you're sitting there in the dark and watching it on a big screen. I was also, of course, I thought the big climax was going to be the night before at the Film Independent Spirit Awards, where it won everything. Mm-hmm. Everything. It was the huge winner there. It not only won Best Picture, it won all these other awards.
But that's for films under $20 million, and this film was made for $1.5 million, which is, somebody said, Tom Cruise's budget for, extras, when he's on a movie.
I have to digress, though, with the best line, I thought, of all award season at the Film Independent Spirit Awards. The hosts get up and they say, "Our next presenter uses the middle initial P to distinguish her from all the other Taraji Hensons."
Well, look.
But there was also a young gay Korean-American filmmaker who won the Cassavetes Award at the Film Independent Spirit Awards, Andrew Ahn, for making a film for under $500,000.
And I would like to see the Academy dump PricewaterhouseCoopers, the auditing firm that made the big mistake that led to the announcement of La La Land.
I have a theory.
Well, PricewaterhouseCoopers is one of the auditing firms that brought about the financial crisis of 2008 because they were doing phony audits because they were getting paid a lot of money to say that these financial firms were sound when they were not.
You're certainly not saying that you think there was anything wrong with the voting.
Who knows? I mean, it's not. Don't
even go there.
PricewaterhouseCoopers. Well, who knows about anything?
Yeah.
But PricewaterhouseCoopers uses the Oscars as their calling card to say how great they are with the public.
Here's my theory on why there was bad karma around this. Warren Beatty gets up to do the presentation, and he talks about the need for diversity and never mentions his trans son specifically. So I think that's why you had this mix-up.
Well, anyway, we're very happy that the film won, and now we want to show you a little bit of our interview with Tarell.
4 months ago, when the movie was opening, we were lucky enough to get Tarell Alvin McCraney, who wrote the original play story on which Moonlight was based, to come in here and do an interview with us. It couldn't have been more charming, interesting, really terrific.
And if you go to our website, and get on our email list, we'll send you the link. I put it on Facebook as well of the entire interview.
But we're just going to show you a few minutes of it now to give you a little more insight into Tarell McCraney now that you know who he is.
I wish it were something more, altruistic and art leaning, but it really just came from a kid trying to figure out his life as a gay black man in Miami.
In Liberty City, Miami, not the Miami that most people are used to seeing on film.
Right, which is one of the things that Barry and I talk about often. I mean, we grew up blocks away from each other. and never knew each other, but we grew up blocks away from each other, lived basically in the same school district, went to the same schools. And one of the things that I think was compelling to us about bringing this film forward is that Liberty City is one of the few neighborhoods within the city limits of Miami, the actual city limits of Miami. So is Overtown, so is Attapata. So all the places that you're seeing in the film are actually the city of Miami. Whereas what you're used to seeing is actually Miami Beach.
South Beach.
Exactly, which is not in the actual municipality of the city of Miami. And so one of the things that was important for us two homeboys was to bring home in all of its real beauty forward. And so, I mean, I had just graduated from DePaul University. I was about to go off to do this play, and I had got accepted to the Yale School of Drama, and then my mother died in July of 2003 from AIDS-related complications. And I was trying to figure out what it meant to be alive and what it meant to be her son and the son of, a drug addict, and what it meant to be writing and trying to create art, and what it meant to be from Liberty City. All these ideas of, I guess, what the precipice of manhood can bring to you. And I just tried to put them down as best I could. In a very visual way. And I think one of the things that Barry talks about is when he read the script, it had so many stunning images that he knew. So it was perfect kismet when he finally got the script about almost 10 years later.
And you've written so many terrific plays.
Well, that's nice of you.
Well,
everybody doesn't think so, but that's that's very kind of you.
The brother-sister trilogy, which was here at the Public and was also in London. Choir Boy here, we saw Wig Out, Head of Passes, and you apparently you're often asked, is this a gay play or is this a black play? And you say it's an American play.
For sure.
And talk about why that's important for you to. Say.
Because they're black gay people in America. And I think the more we try, I mean, I don't say that as a caveat or as an exclusion. I say that because I think the more inclusive we are about understanding who makes up our community, the easier it is for the art to reflect that. And so the moment we start to try to parallelize art into one, or try to canonize art into one sort of silo, we end up negating all of the ways in which intersectionality actually works in our community, in our America, the America we actually exist in, where all these things overlap and intertwine. And so this film, Moonlight, is a perfect example of that. I mean, people are like, well, there are no white people in it. And we're like, yeah, except you can still feel the oppression of the patriarchy all around them, and the abject poverty, in the attempts of hypermasculinity, in the drug wars that are raging on. I mean, the world isn't, this is an American movie. It's a movie about American life. And to try to take that away from the fact that it's also a black and gay movie, those things are antithetical to what we think of as our lives.
If more people had watched this interview in October, I don't think Trump would have won.
Well, that was our attempt by putting him on the air, but oh well. But it was, we love Tarell, we love the movie. If you haven't seen it, please do. It will enrich your life. Yeah, and I don't say that
that's
very
what it's
often.
all about. And in what is now a very dark time, and that's what we're going to talk about. I mean, my God, look what we're living through right now. The desecration of the Jewish cemeteries. And it was so wonderful to see in St. Louis, hundreds of people showing up to clear out the cemetery and clean it up, lined up for blocks to clean it up.
Did you see what Trump said about that this week?
No.
Some people think that perhaps these bomb threats to Jewish community centers and the desecration of the cemeteries was done by the left wing to accuse us of being anti-Semitic.
I know. He was blaming it on Jews. I mean, he is so disgusting. But that was encouraging to see all those people show up. But the roundup of immigrants, what we're living through right now, folks. I mean, I know, we're taping the day after the speech that everybody is saying, oh my God, he can stand up and read a teleprompter. Isn't it wonderful? No, everything that he's for continues to be awful. Other than his pie in the sky, we're going to bring back, the coal industry and all this kind of stuff.
I don't believe anything he said at that speech, but even if you believe it, this is at the same moment when he is accusing the left of those anti-Semitic sabotage acts to get him. The Justice Department is getting rid of any support for trans students, is pulling out of a voting rights case in Texas, is swearing to crack down on legal marijuana use.
And Mike Signorilli, the gay reporter, talked to Ken Blackwell, the right-winger, who assured him that yes, we are working on the Religious Liberty Executive Order and laws, which are going to allow, or at least try to allow, any American who wants to discriminate against anybody else for a religious reason, mainly against LGBT people and women, to do so.
But our focus here, of course, is the decision last week, just as we were taping or just after or whatever, the Justice Department decision to rescind its support of the Obama Department of Education guidelines on trans students.
And this is just hateful stuff. They talk about it as states' rights, which is just a code word for allowing prejudice in this country.
They say that Obama overreached with the guidance that supported trans students.
But the point is that the guidance was not a law. The guidance was about saying, here, look, Title IX forbids sex discrimination. You want to handle these situations, you want to deal with the complexity of having transgender people in your school and everything in a humane and good and just way, here's how you do it.
Right.
And if you don't do it this way, we're going to go to court about it. I mean, there is, of course, the Gavin Grimm case, which is supposed to be heard by the Supreme Court on March 28th, whether or not he can use the restroom of the boy's restroom. He is a boy. He has a birth certificate now that says he's a boy, although that is not what we're demanding, that you have a birth certificate. It's how you identify.
Well, he did a lot of press around this, which was interesting. He was very brave to go out there and do the press when the entire administration was out there saying the reverse. First, I just want to insert that there was reputedly this fight within the administration between Betsy DeVos at Education,
supposedly,
who I expected to say nice things about this week because of this, but she's gone on to do some more hateful stuff about how historically black colleges were a great answer for school choice.
Oh my God, I know.
Oh my God. But at any rate, she evidently tried to stand up to Attorney General Jeff Sessions, and Trump threatened to fire her if she didn't back down and support this policy.
You don't need the money. You're rich.
I do have to make a correction, however. I referred to her brother last week as Richard Prince, when of course it is Eric Prince, yes, who runs Blackwater.
Pick up on that.
But the Department of Justice has told the Supreme Court about its rescinding its Title IX interpretation for trans students as a memo for the Gavin Grimm case, in hopes that the Supreme Court will then refuse to hear the case. Which the Supreme Court might do. They might just kick it back down to the district court and say, you have to look at this again in light of the fact that the government is no longer supporting this Title IX interpretation, because your decision was that you were deferring to the government's interpretation of Title IX. So you have to reconsider this. That's a very possible way this will go.
That's the Auer decision, A-U-E-R, right?
Yes, I think so.
Where you defer. And so, but, well...
We'll see. The Supreme Court can decide to keep hearing the case and just on its own decide to figure out whether or not Title IX or equal protection or whatever supports trans students' access to restroom facilities and dignity in school and everything else, or they could punt it back down to the lower level.
It is going to come around again. I mean, you've got the Pennsylvania case, right?
Well, one more footnote on the Gavin Grimm case. The Supreme Court clerk wrote a nasty letter to Matt Staver of Liberty Counsel, because they'd submitted a brief in the case that referred to Gavin Grimm as her. It referred to Gavin Grimm and her mother. And the Supreme Court clerk wrote a note to them and said, you have used the incorrect title of the case. You must revise that, or we will not accept your brief in this case.
And they invoked the Religious Freedom Act.
Well,
I
they can
don't know
invoke
why-
it all they want,
Well,
but if you use the wrong title, you're not going to get
I
heard.
don't understand why any religious person would have any problem with this, but even the Pope goes around saying that transgender acceptance is like nuclear war.
We're not going to open up another religious discussion at
No,
this point.
well, but and neither did the federal court in Pennsylvania, because they upheld the right of transgender students to use the restrooms consistent with their identity, and one of them is Juliet Ivanko, the sister of the singer Jackie Ivanko, who sang at Trump's inaugural, and then when Trump came out with all this anti-trans stuff, says, "I want you to meet with me and my sister." Well, they haven't heard back.
Don't hold your breath.
They haven't heard back. But the interesting thing about this federal case is because the administration has withdrawn its support for transgender students, that this federal judge said, well, you know, there's a dispute over Title IX, okay, but you got an equal protection claim, and that's what I'm ruling on.
Yes.
The 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause is neither applied nor construed by popular vote. So don't tell me that you've got some parents there who object to this, because these kids have been going along having no problem.
It's never the kid. Maybe in one or two cases there is a kid who objects, usually at the urging of their parents. But for the most part, these trans kids are in school. Their classmates totally support and understand them. There's never a problem using the restroom they want to. And then some parent goes off and starts threatening the school system, and then there's trouble.
Right.
That's what happened to Gavin Grimm. Now, meanwhile, after the Trump administration announced it was bailing out on trans students, there were large demonstrations in cities around the country.
We had 1,500 in New York. I posted the story. I said, that's a huge demonstration. That's a lot of people.
It is.
Larry Kramer goes, that's not huge. There should be more. I said, Larry, come on. 1,500 on short notice, plus the fact that all the officials in New York are piling on, the governor, the mayor, everybody saying, we protect transgender students.
Yeah.
Nothing has changed here. That's what happened in South Florida, where a couple of school districts down there said, you know, absolutely, we affirm this. No problem.
Houston, where they couldn't pass a trans rights bill, but the city of Houston has now said, the school board has said, we are protecting trans students in our schools. The governor of Connecticut has issued an order to schools in Connecticut saying protect trans students.
But not Derby, Kansas, where the school district, because of what the Justice Department is doing, reversed themselves, a 5-2 vote, and said you can no longer use the proper restroom. And it is bullying. You know, Sean Spicer. Well, there's anti-bullying laws. Well, but you're the ones doing the bullying by making them use the wrong restroom. Mm-hmm. Look at the practical effect of what you're doing.
Okay. Well, in the midst of all this, it's actually brought an interesting case to light in Texas, of all places, where a trans boy, high school student, Mac Beggs, who's a wrestler, has been forced to wrestle girls. He wants to wrestle boys. He is a boy. He's taking testosterone.
Yes.
And he's,
which makes him a good wrestler.
Beating all the girls. And
they're unhappy. Everybody's unhappy.
Everybody's unhappy, but the state law in Texas mandates that he must compete in the classification that matches his birth certificate.
And when they, some places when they say birth certificate, they mean your gender at birth.
Yeah.
Even if you had a birth certificate change, they're not going to allow that.
So Mac Beggs, we were asking for this out of order, but if you have that picture of Mac Beggs, the wrestler, there he is.
There he is.
So he is now wrestling girls.
Well,
in
some
the state
girls won't wrestle him because they know they can't beat him.
Yes, some have defaulted.
But it's not his fault. It's the fault of those evil grown-ups.
Now, the Williams Institute in L.A. has come out with a new analysis that says there are 150,000 trans teens in the country, aged 13 to 17, another 206,000 between 18 and 24, and 75,000 LGBT dreamers among the undocumented immigrants, 36,000 of whom are enrolled in the DACA program. That's LGBT, not the trans, but like 300,000 or 400,000 trans kids, teenagers and young 20s.
Sure.
who are going to be affected in schools by the rescinding of this order.
Well, I hope the people will stand up, as you have been, around the country for what is right.
Beyonce tweeted her support of LGBT students.
Can I talk about Arkansas?
Sure.
Yeah. Very horrible decision from the high court there in Arkansas. The state legislature passed a law that said you can't cover, localities can't cover civil rights beyond what the state does, which is a way to invalidate LGBT rights laws.
It's actually what HB 2 in North Carolina contains.
And Tennessee does this, and another state does this. Yeah. But they upheld this law, even though there is something about sexual orientation in hate crimes legislation.
Yeah, we thought we'd beaten this with a little side door thing. Because,
so that's a real setback.
But the court said no.
But the Arkansas Senate also passed an absurd anti-LGBTQ resolution saying that marriage is between a man and a woman. Now, the states are going to press this and try to reinstitute bans on same-sex marriage, hoping for a better court.
Texas's Supreme Court heard arguments this week that the state on whether the state can refuse benefits to same-sex married couples. The court rejected this idea beforehand, but they're taking it up again because they've gotten a lot of pressure from Republican officials in the state.
And what's going on in North Carolina?
Oh, it's a mess. There are various proposals to sort of repeal the HB 2, but not really. And are any of the athletic associations going to fall for that or not?
Right.
They're still in negotiations.
But the news out of North Carolina is that the North Carolina NAACP, led by William Barber, who's terrific, he fights for us and on all fronts for social justice, wants a national NAACP boycott, which the board has agreed to, a national boycott of the state of North Carolina over this bill. And what William Barber is so good at doing is explaining that HB 2 is a lot more than a bathroom bill. It bans localities from passing civil rights laws. It bans you from using the law to go to court to get your rights. It bans localities from passing minimum wage laws. And the NAACP is not just doing this over HB 2, it's doing it over the fact that they limit voting rights so severely and unjustly in the state of North Carolina. So I hope that this can become a national trend.
I actually think the sin of the week is Attorney General Jeff Sessions pulling out of the Texas voting rights, the voting ID case and saying, oh, we've changed our minds from the previous Justice Department. We don't think they have any malice in requiring 98 forms of ID before you can
others
vote.
May pick up the slack and have standing to challenge the law.
There are still plaintiffs there. There are plaintiffs in all these cases who are going to keep them going. But the fact that the Justice Department is doing a 180 on all these cases is not helpful and is disgusting.
Jeff Sessions is a monster.
He is. So, all right. So, a quick rundown because we have a tight show. Missouri, the state Senate has rejected a non-discrimination law that would include sexual orientation.
But Colorado committee advanced a bill against conversion therapy.
In Delaware, big news. The Democrats won a state Senate seat, which then gives control of the state Senate to Dems. Very important.
Very encouraging. And the Tom Price seat in Georgia is up, and there is a pro
John Ossoff.
Good candidate
getting
there.
A lot of attention.
Jackson, Michigan, new anti-LGBT non-discrimination ordinance there could be squashed before it even goes into effect next month because a group of people, Catholic churches and business owners, are trying to stop it by circulating a petition against it.
In Georgia, Governor Nathan Deal, a Republican, reaffirmed that he will veto any religious freedom law, as he has done in the past. Oh, here's my footnote surprise for you. South Carolina, Bob Jones University has regained its tax-exempt status.
Well, they forbade
interracial dating
in the 70s, and
then they dropped that.
Yeah, and that made them lose their federal funding.
Yes, but then in 2000 they said it was okay to date interracially.
Did they get a revelation?
Here's what happened. They to my surprise, were a for-profit university. And now they have manipulated and maneuvered their status. They have redefined themselves as a sort of a nonprofit, appealed to the government, and they have been reinstated as a tax-exempt institution.
Is now run by bigots.
All right.
All right, let's talk about some of these awful things, or no?
Okay,
yes,
but
right.
we've got a lot of videos to show too.
Yes, there was a lesbian couple in Brandon, Florida, who were killed by the husband, the soon-to-be ex-husband of one of them. He had a history of violence. We have a picture of one of them. Her name is
the non-wife,
Samara Rutenberg.
They were teachers, the
together.
women. They taught at the same school. The school gave a lovely statement about what wonderful people they were and great teachers. And the husband, he wore a bulletproof vest
Yes.
when he was killing them because he knew they had access to guns, and they tried to shoot him unsuccessfully, and then he shot himself dead.
It's just horrendous.
Crazy.
Men.
In Chicago, a trans woman, Tiana Richmond, 24 years old, sex worker, because what jobs do a lot of people have available, shot dead.
In New Orleans, 2 murders. First, Chiara McKelveen, a trans woman, was stabbed to death.
Sierra, I'm sure.
Sierra, okay, was stabbed to death there. A lot of witnesses to that. And then shortly afterwards,
China Gibson?
Yes, who was a performer there, who was also killed in New Orleans, shot to death. And then in Monroe, Louisiana, Jaquarius Holland, Jaquarius Holland, a 3rd black trans woman killed in Louisiana in a month. And again, they have all these marginal occupations that they are driven to, where there is a lot of violence. And when I hear all these politicians standing up for trans rights, I don't hear them standing up for employment, for education, housing, feeding, all those kinds of things.
And we're now up to 7 reported murders of trans women this year. In this country, and that is ahead of the rate of last year.
And it's not a new phenomenon. In the past, these people were just misgendered, and we never heard about them because they would just kill them. We never heard that they were transgender.
So I want to show something nice, which is just unexpected. Alpha Chi Omega is a sorority, and they put out a video about welcoming trans women as members of Alpha Chi Omega, and this is a little heartwarming in all this.
Hello, sisters. I'm your National President, Angela Costley Harris. Over the past year, Alpha Chi Omega has been challenged to re-examine the concepts of sisterhood and sorority through the lens of a quickly changing collegiate landscape. Members from all parts of the country have sought guidance about transgender women who've expressed interest in joining our fraternity. These inquiries come from our collegians' sincere desire to create a sorority experience that more fully reflects the realities of today's women in today's world. Alpha Chi Omega is a women's organization, but to stay relevant in today's world, Alpha Chi must be inclusive of all who live and identify as women, regardless of their gender assigned at birth. We recognize that for some of our sisters, embracing this position means adopting a new mindset. And as our understanding of gender identity evolves, so must Alpha Chi Omega. I hope you will stand with me and the rest of the National Council in embracing Alpha Chi's inclusive stance. Thank you, as always, for your support and sisterhood.
They make it sound so sensible and nice, and it is.
You can't get a job, but you can join a sorority. I think it's fabulous.
And the guy suing Grindr because his ex-lover put up false profiles of him, and scores of men were showing up at his house for sex. They're not extending the temporary restraining order in the case because they say he can't show the harm he's suffering is attenuated. You try it.
In Orlando, our old friends at Soul Force, the activist organization that has been going around challenging evangelical universities, the Soul Force people went to Orlando to the National Religious Broadcasters Convention with their campaign, Keep Pulse Alive. They were a little offended that these religious broadcasters were meeting in Orlando. And they built a living altar of resistance at the convention. A little challenging.
I'm going to Orlando the end of March.
Okay.
LGBT journalists.
Football is in the news, even though it's past the season. They'll be starting again. First of all, there was news out of Arizona that the first major college current player, a guy named My King Johnson, was awarded a scholarship at the University of Arizona. He's a defensive end, and he is an out gay man. So that got a lot of attention. But what got less attention was that in Illinois at St. Francis University,
Catholic school, scholarship player
in Joliet, but a smaller school, which is probably why it didn't get as much attention, a linebacker has come out, Kyle Kurdziak. Yeah, whatever. But there was a little local news.
Kyle.
Hi, Kyle. There was a local news report on Kyle, and that was very heartwarming. So let's look at Kyle.
Inspiring story of a young man who faced his fears on the football field. Here's Jim Rose with more.
Since its inception, those who play football, and perhaps those who watch it, have adhered to an unwritten code of conduct that has excluded men who were gay. But as society has changed, so too is the backlash that's been used to keep gay athletes who had a passion to play the sport from competing. Here is the story of one member of the University of St. Francis football team, perhaps the first scholarship athlete, who decided to end the charade while he was still competing at the collegiate level.
I like the aggressiveness. I like playing violent. You know, especially being a linebacker, you have to be violent. If you're not violent, you're not a linebacker.
Number 29, linebacker Kyle Kurdziak of the University of St. Francis is passionate about playing football. But for years, he hid a secret so he could participate in what some consider the machoist of team sports. And the secret was eating him up, going back to his childhood.
Growing up in Streeter, it was a very small town, a very, very closed-minded town. So I didn't feel welcomed at first there, just because I knew who I was as a person around middle school. And as soon as that hit me, and just being around a lot of my friends, a lot of their parents, you know, it wasn't like a mentality or attitude that was really accepting at the time, and I didn't feel comfortable in my own shoes.
Last May, he told a coworker at a Joliet clothing store that he was gay. In August, he started to tell some of his teammates, among them Alex Zalomi, a defensive end who turned out to be one of his best friends.
We were hanging out over summer, and we were going to a concert in Joliet, and we were just walking in, and he was like, "Hey, I wanted to let you know that I'm gay," and I didn't even break stride. I was like, "Oh, okay."
The next step was informing his coach, Joe Curry.
I was completely 100% happy for him. You know, everybody in their life, desires to be part of something and be happy, and Kyle's no different.
St. Francis is a Catholic university. The religion frowns upon homosexuality. You wonder if there's been any backlash to Kurdziak coming out while being on scholarship.
No, not one bit. Not one bit. It's been 100% totally positive, and I think that says something about our university and our program here. We're a welcoming university that, welcomes everybody, and, Kyle's part of us. He's no different.
I feel so relieved now. Like, I'm so happy about the person I am today. Just be able to get that off my chest and just feel comfortable about who I am. Like, I don't have to hide behind this mask anymore. I don't have to conform to some norm anymore. I can be Kyle Kurdziak. I can be who I want to be, and without no restrictions.
Kyle told me his inspiration for coming out was Michael Sam, but the difference is that Sam waited until he was done with college ball, and Kyle still has 2 years of eligibility left. Kyle Kurdziak, a courageous young man who is telling his story so that those who come after him can do so and eliminate the fear and the anxiety that leads to depression. By the way, a big shout out to Pat Keating, a St. Francis graduate. He researched the story, turned beyond to it, he photographed it, and he edited the story. Wow. So, Pat, thank you. Yes. Great story.
Yeah.
Thanks, he was turned on to the story.
Oh.
It was nice.
But just a reminder, that's
Sweet
a Catholic university,
yes.
St. Francis.
Times are changing.
Joliet, Illinois.
Times are changing, but maybe not so much in Australia. There was an extortion ring that was broken up there. A 16-year-old was going around and telling men on Grindr, "I'm going to expose you as a pedophile. Give me $1,000, right? One of them committed suicide. And the police finally caught up with him. When the boy's father was contacted, he said, he's just doing the police's job. You know, and he worked with a 15-year-old and another 16-year-old. He thought he was on a morality hunt. It reminds me of the Russian stuff, where they call the pedophile hunters, they call them. But it has nothing to do with pedophilia. It's just about, you know,
it's a dating app.
Going after gay men. And thank God they caught him. And they're giving him no bail because they said, you seem rather recalcitrant about this.
And dangerous if we let you out. All right. In Slovenia, a new partnership law for same-sex couples has taken effect. It's supposed to grant all the rights of heterosexual marriage to same-sex couples, but no adoption or assisted reproduction. I think that's a pretty large omission.
Very typical as these laws go. Kenya apparently is providing a safe haven for LGBT refugees from Uganda. Everything's not perfect in Kenya, but
we've heard about this before, and the fact that the refugee camps in Kenya are not safe places for LGBT refugees from Uganda. So it's a little
It's all
dicey.
relative.
In Trinidad and Tobago, gay activist Jason Jones has filed suit against the sodomy laws there to try to decriminalize homosexuality.
In the United Kingdom, a heterosexual couple that wants to have a civil partnership, because they don't want to get married, but they want to have the rights that gay couples can have through a civil partnership, even though they can get married too, was denied by a appeals court there.
In Italy, a court has ordered the recognition of both fathers of twins born to a surrogate in the United States. The court said if they're legal in the United States, they're legal here. Both fathers can be on the birth certificate.
And a big Dutch study has found what we know, that there's no difference in outcomes among children raised by same-sex couples and different sex parents in the Netherlands.
In Mexico City, the government is inviting same-sex couples to join in a mass wedding on March 25th. They're trying to break the record for mass weddings, which currently is at 1,690. Why would you want to do that?
Who did that? Reverend Moon?
He certainly did one of those, or more of those. In India, the health ministry is putting together a new sex ed campaign that supports same-sex attraction, that talks openly about gay people and in an improving way, and that's a good thing. Whereas, of course, that kind of education is having trouble elsewhere. In a sad story from China, Ren Hong, 29 years old, a very famous photographer there, out gay, thought of as the next Robert Mapplethorpe, very overt in his sexual imagery.
Well, take a look for yourself.
That's one of the few we can show. There's many of his pictures are more explicit, but they're beautiful, and he was a beautiful photographer, and he committed suicide at 29. Very sad. He'd been arrested often for the explicit nature of his photographs, and now he's gone. In Malaysia, a trans woman, Shamira Krishnan, 27 years old, brutally attacked and shot dead. She worked at a florist shop, was very, well-loved and popular, but the subject of fatal violence. All right, we're moving on to AIDS news.
Yes. Well, the administration is saying they're going to keep Medicare and Social Security as it is, but, that's only for current retirees and maybe not even them. And dismantling, you had Trump this week saying nobody knew health care could be so complicated. People really need to listen to what he's saying, and the Republicans are saying. They keep using this word access. Everybody's going to have access to health care. That's only if you have enough money. They're destroying the safety net, and this is going to hit people with AIDS really hard.
There's a new group in New York, an activist group called Rise and Resist, which is newly formed in opposition to what he's doing. And one of their I went to the meeting last night, and they're going to take on a campaign against the block granting of Medicaid. This is what the Trump administration wants to do. They want to, instead of making Medicaid an entitlement program where if you qualify for it, you get whatever benefits there are, they want to change it to, we're going to give a certain amount of money to the states as a block grant, and then they decide what to do with it. But we're not giving them any more. So if they have more people or the costs are more, tough luck. There is no more money at the end.
And that's what they want to substitute for the Affordable Care Act. They want to give you 5,000 lousy bucks. Try getting good health care on $5,000 a year. It's not going to happen for you. And then they say, oh, well, you know, then you get to make all these individual choices. No, you don't.
They talk about states' rights. They talk about decentralization. They talk about getting the federal government out of your life. And meanwhile, all they're doing is
picking your pocket.
Well, and that's also true with the infrastructure talk.
Yes.
And Trump slipped in this thing last night about, in a combination of public and private money, we're going to transform the country.
You're going to pay $50 to go across a bridge that's built by a private company.
Chuck Schumer went on TV last night or this morning and said 85 cents out of every dollar that we give to private companies to build these roads is going to go into their pockets as skimming off the top. It's not going to be invested in this building. They're going to hand over huge amounts of money from the federal government to private companies to do this, and then the private companies are going to do the work and put huge tolls on these roads and bridges, and it's like the insurance companies in the healthcare industry. You don't need insurance companies. You can do single payer, and it's much cheaper. And if the federal government would invest in the infrastructure, it would be cheaper.
I mean, Britain did a lot of privatization of the railroads, and all it did is lead to accidents and death.
And these charter schools. We have this latest report that says students do not do as well in charter schools.
But one of the big Republican campaigns, the big Koch brothers campaigns over the last 40 years has been to make you hate the government and think the government can't do anything right. And and they have succeeded with a lot of y'all. And you don't understand. I mean, people said they don't want to part with Medicare. But they're gonna screw that up too.
The amount of money the Koch brothers are putting into getting Neil Gorsuch put on the Supreme Court, all those fancy little slick ads you see for Neil Gorsuch are Koch brothers.
And I want to ask his gay friends who've come forward, have you pinned him down that he's not going to overturn the marriage decisions and the sodomy decision?
And that's the least of it.
You're his friends. I mean, yes, of course. What he's going to do on so many fronts is terrible.
Yeah.
All right.
Health care for Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yep.
Sotomayor did not look very happy to be approached by Donald Trump last night.
God. I don't know what I would do if he came near me.
Well, I wouldn't show up. Maxine Waters didn't go because she was afraid she couldn't control herself.
I did shake hands with George Bush once when I was trying to ask him a question and act like I was a supporter and say, Governor, what are you going to do about those sodomy laws down there? And he said, why are you bringing that up? Those laws aren't used. Yes, they were, Governor, and we overturned it in the Supreme Court.
All right, we digress.
All right, Salt Lake City. They've got a bill there to require someone to disclose their HIV or AIDS status before engaging in sexual activity or face a criminal penalty. It passed a House committee. They're going backwards there.
And in California, I'm happy to say they're proposing getting rid of laws that criminalize people with HIV. So they're going in opposite directions. There's a panel discussion coming up on March 15th that with Sean Strube and people have been the subject of these laws, and for some reason I'm on this panel. I don't know why. But March 15th at Ludlow House in New York on the Lower East Side.
Give me the details. I'll put it in our
when
email.
I have them, I'll give them to you.
Thank
but it's
you very
March
much.
15th.
Okay.
In New York City, the AIDS Memorial in Greenwich Village is now officially open. It's not officially completed. I think they're going to do more to it. It's at 7th Avenue and West 12th Street.
Right across where there should be a hospital, but there isn't.
There used to be, and now there are expensive condos. Anyway.
There is an emergency room down there if you get into real
which
trouble.
people give
I went
raves
there
to.
when I had my chest pains. All right, let's talk about entertainment. Let's talk about When We Rise, the ABC series. Now, you know, I don't want to be blasé about this. Come on, 8 hours of television, the history of the
I'm crossing my arms. That may be a tell.
The history of the LGBT movement in San Francisco. Never has so much time been devoted to something like this, and it, you know. Dustin Lance Black is the writer. A lot of stars are in it. There's a lot of kissing, but I mean, there's a lot of characters, and there's an earnest effort to represent a lot of history and intersectionality among the movements and all that kind of stuff. They focused on people who survived into today, a lot of them, because they wanted to, you know, show you the people growing over the 40 years. It starts in 1971, actually, and focuses a lot on Cleve Jones and Roma Guy and Ken. Yes, the black African-American guy. Now, you know, I mean, I've heard from people who say, hey, I was there and that didn't happen that way, and that's going to happen. They compress things.
Yeah, you can't expect that kind of nitty-gritty accuracy. And I watched, we have seen only 2 of the 8 hours as we speak to you because we tape on Wednesday afternoon, and the rest of it airs Thursday, Friday, or tonight, Thursday and Friday. So we've seen only what aired on Monday. And the early word was that the earlier stuff was the best, and then it sort of got a little too didactic as it went along.
There's a lot of kissing.
There is a lot of kissing. There's even a little nudity. Not full nudity, but, you know, skin. I didn't love it, but I don't think I'm the audience. Right. I think this is on ABC. It's supposed to be a big history event that will reach a much wider audience.
So we want to hear from you from around the country about what you're thinking. I posted it on Facebook. 50 people put in comments, you know, about how they're liking it or not liking it, etc.
I've heard from people who loved it. I was not that enthusiastic, but you know, I think it's a valiant effort. I wish it were a little more sophisticated and subtle, but
look,
whatever.
You know,
we know too much.
You gays complain when they don't represent the diversity of the community, and now you're complaining when there's too much in it.
Moonlight is a far more sophisticated and thoughtful approach to the essence of personal evolution.
And if you really want to go back in time, they're having a 35th anniversary production on Broadway of Torch Song Trilogy, Harvey Firestein's, directed by Moises Kaufman, but they're retitling it Torch Song.
Well, and a few more going back in time. Eric Marcus's podcast, Making Gay History, is starting its 2nd season. He wrote this book, Making Gay History, where he interviewed a ton of people, including me.
He interviewed me too. I can get the book.
You were
too many white guys.
Yes.
That's true.
But I hear raves about this podcast, because what he did was he just took the audio he had done at the time when he interviewed people for the book, and he had done it on high quality equipment because he didn't know what he was doing when he did it, and he asked someone who was a sound engineer, because he had worked in TV. We both worked at Good Morning America and the CBS Morning News, and so the guy told him, here's the equipment you could buy, and it turns out it was really good, high quality broadcast equipment. So now he has these tapes that are really high quality. So he did a whole season. You can find this online. Making Gay History is a podcast, and everybody loved the first season, and now I think the 2nd season starts with interviewing Randy Wicker, at least, about Marsha P. Johnson. I'm not sure whether Marsha herself is in it.
These are all Stonewall types.
And the San Francisco GLBT Historical Society is relaunching its oral history project. They have 600 oral histories already on file, which you can find online, but they're going to do more. And they're training people to do more interviews. And you can, if you're in San Francisco and want to get involved in this, you can.
The movie Akron Akron the Film. You can go to akronthefilm.com if you want to read about it. It's out on DVD. This is by Brian O'Donnell. It's about a gay couple in Akron, and it's a fascinating story. It was a good movie, but the most interesting thing about it, it's young gay love, but there's nothing about the angst about being gay. That's not what the story is about at all, and it's in Akron, Ohio. So there's none of that homophobia and shame and everything like that, but it's a fascinating story, and it is out on DVD. You can read about it.
A couple of things to look for coming up. Evan Wolfson's movie, The Freedom to Marry, or the Freedom to Marry movie about Evan Wolfson and the whole campaign, opens this weekend here in New York at the Village East Cinemas on 2nd Avenue and 12th Street, and around the country too, I think. But The Freedom to Marry is a movie you might want to take a look at. Of course, I'm looking forward to Feud, Betty and Joan. The 5th, is that Sunday night? Today's the 1st.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah. Thursday, Friday. Yes,
FX?
Sunday night. I think so. It's a Ryan Murphy production.
Who did The Normal Heart?
And who did Glee, who did everything.
Yes.
The Normal Heart.
Well, it's gay.
It's the least
Well,
of his.
I guess Glee is
of
gay.
his productions. But Fox likes it so much, they've already ordered a second season, and he's doing this as one of his anthology series, like American Crime Story, where this year it's Betty and Joan. Next year is going to be Prince Charles and Princess Diana.
Wow.
Feud, Prince Charles and Princess Diana.
Now listen, you're bringing up Glee and all those things. Larry Kramer said to him after The Normal Heart, Ryan, why are you wasting your time with all that schlock when you could be doing things like this?
Oh, please.
And they are doing a sequel to The Normal Heart.
Fine.
The Met Breuer Museum, which is where the old Whitney is opening its Marsden Hartley exhibit based on his experiences in Maine on March. He's big gay.
His work is wonderful.
March 15th.
That was part of Jonathan David Katz's whole big
Marsden Hartley
survey.
Check him out.
The Japan Society Gallery here in New York from March 10th to June 11th is doing an exhibit called A Third Gender, Beautiful Youth in Japanese Prints that looks spectacular. You can find out about it by going to japansociety.org/gallery. We'll continue to tell you about that. And I want to note that, are you following Billions' second season? This is the Paul Giamatti.
I was tempted by the Billions. I like Paul Giamatti.
It's edgy. But so it's Paul Giamatti versus Damian Lewis as a big capitalist. So Damian Lewis has a new intern in his office, a non-binary intern named Taylor, who comes into his office, Damian's office, and says, I'm Taylor, my pronouns are they, them, and us, or whatever. And Damian looks at Taylor and says, okay. And then when another employee later on refers to Taylor as she, Damian says, it's they.
I'm so far behind the curve, I didn't know he was married to Helen McCrory, an actress I've loved for many, many years on stage.
And the Real Housewives of Atlanta are going on and on about who's having sex with women, but they're all saying, oh, I'm not a lesbian, I'm this. And there's never any discussion of bisexuality, and it makes me nuts. They're all speaking of binary, they can only think of these binary terms, and it's wrong.
And Ricky Martin told Andy Cohen his first male crush was John Travolta in his underwear in Saturday Night Fever.
Okay, well, that's how we're ending
But he never
this
told
week.
John.
See Moonlight.
Please.
And congratulations
And
to
we'll see you
Moonlight.
next week.
Okay.
Bye.